The Lord is come, let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven, 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 nature sing. Ooh, Lord, ooh, joy. Oh, joy to the world, the Savior reigns. Let men their songs employ, while fields and floods, rocks, hills and plains repeat the sound and joy, repeat the sound and joy, repeat, repeat the sound and joy. Oh, go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere there. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. Oh, go and tell it. He rules the world with truth and grace, and makes the nations prove the glories of his righteousness, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love, and wonders, wonders of his love. And the wonders of his righteous love, and the wonders, wonders, wonders of his love.
Merry Christmas. In past years at Orchard Hill, between our Butler campus, our Strip District campus, our Wexford campus, we've gathered 16,000, 17,000 people, and this year we don't think that's prudent or probably the best thing, and so we will have some in-person services, but we're going to have a great online service, and this is just a little preview of it. You got to see one of the songs that we'll do in an acoustic version. It'll be done in a full version. And this auditorium behind me will be seated in a socially distanced way in order for people to participate safely for Christmas Eve. So you can go online and register for Christmas Eve in person at any of our campuses, assuming we're still under the same kind of space that we're under today when I'm recording this. And there will also be a live stream of this at 1, 3, 5, and 7 on Christmas Eve day. But until then, this is just a little taste of Christmas Eve, and I want to start by telling you a story. It's a story Max Lucado tells in one of his books, and it's a story about a father and a daughter, Joe and Madeline. And Joe, on Christmas Eve, would always gather with his daughter and his mom, and he would eat, and he would often feign that after he had eaten, he was too full to dance with his daughter. And his daughter would protest and put up a little kind of fit, and then he would act like he remembered all of a sudden, and the two of them would dance. And for Joe, this was a deeply significant moment in his life every year, because before Madeline was born, he would dance on Christmas Eve with his wife. But then his wife became pregnant in a surprise pregnancy, and she didn't survive, but little Madeline did. And so every year as they would dance, they would be in a place where they would celebrate Christmas Eve. And in the Minnesota winters where Joe and Madeline lived and Joe worked as a butcher, this would always seem like somewhat of a highlight. But then rebellion flew into Joe's world, kind of like a Minnesota blizzard. All of a sudden, his daughter didn't seem to respond to him. He learned when he should talk, which was almost never, and what to say, which was almost nothing. He wasn't sure how he should respond to the tattoos and the body piercings and the tight shirts and the late nights and the poor grades. But the one thing he was pretty certain of is that the kid that Madeline had started to date was not good for her. He was not excited about it, and he was certain that this year on Christmas Eve, she was not going to spend Christmas Eve with that kid, that she was going to spend Christmas Eve as she normally did, with Grandma, with him, with other relatives who would come over to visit. And so this year, Christmas Eve didn't have the anticipation that it had had, and his rebellious teenage daughter wanted no part of it, and she made that obvious with the silence and the difficulty all through the night. And when more of the relatives arrived, Joe thought maybe the music and an invitation to dance would make her forget that she was with him and not with this kid. And so he invited her to dance like he had year after year. And this year she huffed and was really irritated. You would have thought that he had insulted her by asking her. And so she left. She stormed out of the house, and it wasn't that day that she left for good, but it wasn't a lot of days later that she did. Joe tried in the days that were left. He bought her a new dress. He tried to invite her to watch a movie. He tried making her favorite dinner. And the day that she actually left was a day that he took off early from work to be home to see her when she got home from school, but it was the day she didn't come home. Some friends told Joe that she had been seen with this kid at a bus station and that they had bought a ticket to Chicago. And where they went from there was anybody's guess. Well, Joe didn't really know, but where Madeline and this boyfriend went was Houston, where he had a cousin. And for a few dollars, they could spend the nights in his apartment as long as they were out during the day, because he worked the night shift, which was just fine for them because they had plans to get jobs and start to earn money and get their own place and start their own life. But at their ages, it was harder to get a job and to figure all of that out than they thought. And one night, soon after they had been there, the cousin came home and announced that he didn't like this arrangement anymore, and it was the same day that the boyfriend announced that he wasn't crazy about this and was going home. And so Madeline found herself alone, found herself homeless, and found herself trying to figure out where to go. She went to a homeless shelter, and there she met a woman who told her about how she didn't have to live this way, how she had another option. She had said she had just made a whole bunch of money dancing, and she invited Madeline because they needed another girl to dance. And so she said she'd think about it and went about just her simple way of trying to find a job for a few more days. But hunger has a way of softening convictions, and soon she found herself out of money and found herself dancing for men the age of her father, and she tried not to think about it. In time, the cousin of her boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, came by with some letters and dropped them off and said, "Somebody must have ratted you out." She kept the letters. She didn't open them. She couldn't bear the thought. And every time she thought of home, she felt a little nostalgic, but quickly pushed it down and quickly said, "This really isn't what I want to do." And so the letters were never opened, despite the emotion that they pushed on her. There were other moments where she thought about home. There was the time when she walked by a store and there was a dress like the one that her dad had bought her just in the weeks before she left, that she had thought was too plain, and now she'd trade 1,000 dresses to be home. But again, she just pushed it out of her mind and resolved not to walk that way again, because she was now trying to make her life the way that she was. Well, one day, there was a card sitting there, a letter, just like the other, same color, same shape, but this one didn't have a postmark. And she asked about it, and one of the other girls said that he was there. Joe, her dad, presumably had dropped it off. And he had seen where she worked and everything else, and so Madeline quickly opened that letter. And it said, I know where you are. I know what you've done. And what I've written in all the other letters still stands. And Madeline said, well, I don't know what you've written in the other letters. And so she quickly began to open the letters, and letter after letter was soon opened with the paper being kind of strewn across the dressing room floor, and tears began to stream down her face. And she thought, maybe, just maybe, if I leave now, I can make it. And so she quickly found a bus ride back to Minnesota. And just as the relatives were leaving that night, Madeline showed up at the door. Some of the relatives said, Joe, there's someone here to see you. And here was Madeline, a backpack over her shoulder, saying, if the invitation is still good, the answer is yes. And what she held in her hand was a letter that said very simply, will you come home and dance with your papa once again? You know, that story may be the imagination of a writer, but it captures something about Christmas. See, in Genesis chapters 1 and 2, we learn that God created us to live in perfect union with Him. You could almost say it's like the perfect family. But in Genesis 3, we're told that through the choice of Adam and Eve, that they ran away. They chose their own path. And you may think, well, I've never chosen my own path or gone my own way to the extent that Adam and Eve did or Madeline did. But what we know in the Bible is that this idea of sin, this idea of us choosing our own path, rebelling against God, is actually a pretty prominent idea. In Romans chapter 5, verse 12, we say, therefore, it says, therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man, through Adam and Eve, and death through sin, and in this way death came to all people because all sinned. And what that means is that all of us, in some way or another, have run away from God. Maybe it hasn't been dramatic or far, but we've chosen our own path. But the beautiful news of Christmas is that Jesus, by coming to this earth, has invited us to come home and dance with the Father once again. This is Romans chapter 5, verse 19. It says, for just as through the disobedience of one man, the many were made sinners, so also through the obedience of one man, the many will be made righteous. And that's Jesus Christ, and that's what we celebrate at Christmas. And so what I'd love to do is just simply invite you, either right now, just where you are, just in this moment, to acknowledge your need to come home and say, God, I want to begin again a relationship with you because Jesus has made it possible. And if this has motivated you or encouraged you, this music, this little quick story for a few moments, I'd love to invite you to commit to watching the live stream on Christmas Eve day at orchardhillchurch.com. Don't go to .org. There's an imposter Orchard Hill in Iowa. orchardhillchurch.com. There's links there. It'll be on Facebook, YouTube Live, and it will be at 1, 3, 5, and 7 on Christmas Eve day. Or there will be limited seating for social distancing purpose at all of our campuses where you can come and experience the invitation of Jesus Christ to you personally once again to come home. And so I hope you'll have a Merry Christmas and that part of your Christmas will be a spiritual homecoming.